got there? Hold on just a second.
All right, let's see if we are. Yes, we are live. Welcome to those who may be coming to eavesdrop on our conversation from Facebook. It's not the same, you know. But it's nice. It's nice that it's available. We're going to wait another couple minutes for. I know of a few more people that we're asking to join in, so I'm going to give it another minute or so. Thank you, Josh, once again for putting on the chat box the link to Sepharia if you don't have it. You know what? I'm gonna post it on the Facebook as well, on the Facebook page. Where are we? Right here.
This it? It is. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so let's get started. We'll start with a little moment of silence and meditation. Begin with our chant of Shalom. So take a breath for Shalom. מודה אני לפניך. How can we not just open our heart and let ourselves be surrendered, knowing we are in your presence, Holy One? Melech Chai V'Kayam. You are the source of all life, the ground of all existence. You are existence itself. Shehechazarta bi nishmati bechemla. Holy One, you keep within each of us a breathing soul, an expression of your being. Rabba emunatecha, your faith in each of us is boundless. Amen. And together we say the blessing before busying ourselves with words of Torah, with keeping conscious company. That ends with Asher Kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Join me. Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, Asher Kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Okay. So we began in Pirkei Avot, chapter 1. We were in Mishnah number 6. We talked about, well, let me read again what the Mishnah is. Yehoshua ben Perachia and Nitai of Arbel received the tradition from them. Yehoshua ben Perachia says, appoint a teacher for yourself, acquire a friend, at least this is my translation from my book, and judge everyone favorably. I think Sophia has something very similar. Appoint for thyself a teacher, and acquire for thyself a companion, interesting, and judge all men with the scale weighted in his favor. So slightly different, which I always enjoy, because it gives us more to talk about. But I think we went all the way to, first of all, defining who those two great personas were in history, and then I think we barely got to appoint a teacher for yourself, and we were going, if I remember correctly, to continue this week with acquire a friend for yourself. Is that everybody's recollection, or we already moved forward? More or less. All right. I didn't leave a little mark on my book this time to say we stopped here. So acquire. So it's interesting. You know, the word in Hebrew is kna, kne, ukne lecha. So those of us who know Hebrew, kne actually literally means buy. Buy for yourself a friend. So it's interesting that the Hebrew is thinking about it this way. It's like purchase for yourself. So I like the translation that I have here, which is acquire. Acquire for yourself a friend for yourself. How do we acquire a friend? Right? How do we do that? How do we acquire a friend? Like, anybody wants to jump in? Anybody else?
Intentionally go out and seek one.
Yes, but I mean, there is a way to acquire. It's like, for me, it feels like it's something that has to come from us, right? It can't just happen like that. Um, there's a sense that you want to, like, there's something that is has to come from you, right? To make that connection.
Be reciprocal in
Yeah,
your
so
friendship.
it makes me think a little bit. I mean, in different contexts, but it makes me think a little bit about what at this time marriage was viewed as. So it may be a little bit of a tangent, but bear with me for just a second. So marriage, until very recently, maybe 100 years, was always understood to be a family affair, right? It's two families got together. They wanted to put their wealth together. They wanted to enlarge their fields if they were farmers, whatever the case may be. Marriage was seen always. I mean, kings did that to enlarge their kingdoms, right? For thousands of years, marriage was understood to be a transaction. It was a business proposition, and as that, if we're gonna talk about that next a little bit next verse, but part of a Jewish wedding, from this consciousness of 1,000, 2,000 years ago, is that understanding. I mean, when we look at a Jewish, an original Jewish ketubah, a marriage license, right? There is literally in the words, and we'll talk about what exactly that is, but there is about an exchange of goods that happens. The exchange of ring, actually, if you look at Jewish law, is what constitute really the official marking of a marriage, because it's an exchange of goods, right? It's each the bride and the groom marking. It's like tattooing, right? It's like we're marking each other, like marking this purchase. So there's this sense of great, and that is reverberating, actually, as far as the mystics are concerned, in the tapestry of the universe. When that exchange happens, the exchange of the rings, and the formula that goes with that, right? There's a formula that goes with that a pronouncement to be said, that affect and changes the tapestry of the universe. So this word kaneh lecha feels to me very intimate. It's like it's entering into a very special kind of relationship that is almost, it's not at the same level of a marriage, but it feels like the underlying word here is that there is a kind of intimacy, between, it's not any kind of friend. It's not an acquaintance, right? So it's a really, it feels, the word here that is used feels like it's really deep. It's a deep friendship. It's a long-term, right, heart kind of friend. And the word for friend in Hebrew is also very interesting, is chaver. And the root of that word give us the word chibur, which literally means connection. Right? So there is this sense of a deep connection. That's what a friend is. It's a very intimate connection. So it's very different than a teacher, right? I think that's why there is there's a teacher that has a specific role to play, but there is this deep, intimate connection that you make with a friend that is on a different level than what you could have maybe with a teacher. Does that make sense?
Rabbi,
Yeah.
in the Pirkei Avos in the Seder,
Mm-hmm.
it has under the commentaries that Rashi says that the companions or friends that it's referring to are books, because books are the best companions.
Right. Yeah, I saw that comment, and actually there was a kind of I saw that in the book that I used that says that he saw that as a warning against solitary Torah study. Like you should not study Torah by yourself. You should always have a companion, right? And you need to have a friend from which to learn. Which
Yeah, I have enough friends. I just don't have any shelves to put them on.
Right. Yeah, but there's also a warning. You don't want to be, lost in those kinds of friendship at the expense of actual human connections, right?
True.
So there's a trade-off here. Yeah, books are great, but don't lose the human connection, because in fact, it is through that human connection that that you are, that you're able to go into depth. One of the comments that I have here, there's a lot of comments in the book that I have from Ta'anit, that says one must exert great effort in cultivating a friendship, right? Even to the extent of yielding personal preferences to the will and habits of one's friends. So that's also what I mean by, like, there's a sense that you have to do something about friendship. It just doesn't drop on your lap. And the rabbis here are really saying, a friend, that kind of friendship that we're talking about, it has to be cultivated, right? It has to be sought after. It has to be, it comes with effort, right? You must put yourself into this to get the most out of it. And there's a quote even from the Rambam that even takes it, I think, to the place where it even gets to that intimacy of what Chaver and Kaneh here allude to. Rambam says, "One who loves, he and you are one." Right. So there's really this deep sense from the rabbis actually reading this, these few words that really connect to, like, that the kind of friendship that you want to cultivate, right? That becomes so intimate that it's almost connected to love, which is why in my own tendential mind I went to this idea of the wedding and the exchange of rings. I think that it feels this way to me. So still Ta'anit, and then I'm happy to open it to a conversation. Ta'anit says, a good friend serves three functions. That's also in the book that I have. The first is a catalyst for increased success at Torah study, right? So a friend is a study buddy, right? You need somebody to bounce off of in order to study. That's why in yeshivas you always are paired up with somebody to argue over the text, right? You need always to have somebody, kenegdo, like we say, as against you. It's the way that the relationship between Adam and Eve is mentioned, right? That Eve was created kenegdo, as against him. In that kind of relationship, because it's the kind of relationship that helps and enhance and open and grow each other from that place of great love. So you need a learning buddy. You can't, Rashi may be right, but you need somebody to study with. And in yeshivot, that's what they do, so that they each bring this rabbi, and this rabbi, whoever comes up for them, in arguing against each other's point in order to get a fuller picture of the meaning of it all.
Also, maybe it's just that, Rashi can work with just books, but the rest of us mere mortals probably need a little more help than that.
Yeah, but also, I mean, the first yeshivot actually, but well, it's hard to tell when the first yeshivot, I mean, what we are reading now, can be understood as the first yeshivot as well, because that's what the rabbinic tradition really brought to the world. But the first yeshivot say in Ashkenaz, where the land of Ashkenaz, which is where Rashi lived in northern part of France and the western part of Germany. That's where the first. So Rashi was one of the first to actually usher in this schools, right, of thought, of Jewish thought in the land of Ashkenaz at the time, over 1,000 years ago. So that's also where this is coming from. This idea that you always need somebody kenegdecha, as against you, in order to become more than you can be. And that's the second aspect, second function of a friend, to offer constructive criticism to one another, right? So it could be through study, but it could be, here it mentions, about fulfilling the mitzvot, right? Your behavior in the world. Like a great friend, an intimate friend would be able to do that for you. And the third function is to provide good advice in all areas and act as a discreet confidant who does not reveal secrets to others. And that's very important for our tradition, actually, because one of the cardinal laws in Jewish thought is this idea of lashon hara, like you cannot gossip. Like gossiping is one of the worst sin, let's say, but I don't believe in that word. That one can actually do. But we ask the question, so the question is, so what does that mean? So gossiping, okay, you can never say anything bad about anyone. Because that's gossiping specifically behind their back. You can never do that. But the rabbis say, so that's kind of obvious. But the rabbis say, well, that's great, and we might, and all of us might understand that, because saying something negative about somebody else, not in their presence, might spread calumny and really destroy their reputation, and it could be, oftentimes it is connected to even murder, right? Because it could lead to someone being ostracized, or someone even, committing suicide. I mean, you could get very far. But the rabbis also say, and you can never say something positive also about someone when they're not in their presence, and actually even in their presence, even when they're there. And there's this conversation about, but why is that? Why can't you say something positive? That doesn't sound to me like lashon hara. It doesn't sound to me like gossiping. It doesn't sound to me like bad mouthing if you're saying something good about someone. And the rabbis actually say, well, the problem even when saying something good about someone, like praising someone, is that so the people around you, or the one person that you are praising that person to, might hear that and feel bad about themselves, right? Why are you praising this person and not me, kind of thing? Like their ego might something might happen in their heart, was like cringing, right? Because you said something good about someone, and they feel jealousy, and they feel resentment, and they feel antagonistic now toward that person that you just sang praises to, because they wanted to be in your good graces, and then that other person is in your good graces, and right? So the rabbis are warning us not even to say anything positive about somebody in public. So again, the question is, so we all need a place to vent. We all need, someone we could share things in confidence, right? And so that's also acquire for yourself a friend, that kind of friend, that is that intimate kind of friend that you can trust wholeheartedly, so that in fact you can have that little place in your life to vent, to express that which weighs on your heart. If you need to gossip, if you need to whatever it needs to happen, so that you can have that outlet in the world. So it is really, the rabbis really are seeing this as critical for your mental sanity, your mental health, to in fact have a friend. Does that make sense? So that connected with me to also the no, that was the sorry, I made a note here on my on my paper, but that connected to the teacher. So that was last week. That was 2 weeks ago. Anybody has commentary on that, or should we move on? Somebody wants to add to this? All right. So now there is a very interesting closing to that. Which is, hang on a second. Somebody's trying to join us. Hopefully that will do it. All right, so then it says, judge all men with the scale weighted in his favor. So it's a little bit of an interpretation. Dan et kol ha'adam. So when the Hebrew says ha'adam, it doesn't, so the word is Adam, which here gets translated as men in Sepharia, but Adam most often is used more as the generic term for humanity, especially when it says Ha-Adam. So I think the translation here is a little bit narrow. And I prefer my translation says judge everyone, which is also an Orthodox translation. So it's not, the Sepharia has cornered the market on that. So what, judge everyone favorably? That's, to me, it's like in some of the previous Mishnayot, that feels like a tall order. Judge, kol ha'adam, like all of humanity favorably. Any reaction to that?
There's some people that are hard to judge favorably, like a Ted Bundy or an Adolf Hitler. How do you?
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to go to those extreme, but yes, I mean, the Talmud will always go to those extreme to prove their point. I wonder what they would say about that. Judge everyone favorably. I mean, we all want, I mean, there's something in me that says, yes, I really like, yes, of course, judge everyone favorably. But
I think it's about giving people the benefit of the doubt, or giving people the benefit of the doubt, or assuming, the presumption of good instead of something else initially, anyway.
Initially, yes. Anybody else? Yeah, I think there is, there's something here. Judge, when you said judge everyone favorably, you have to include yourself as well, right? Because a lot of judgment that we have on others are also a reflection of judgments we have towards ourselves, right? Isn't that the one finger and the rest pointing at you that we learned in kindergarten? Yeah, I mean, for those of us who have an inward directed practice, right? We all know. I mean, it doesn't have to be just to be that, but we all know that all that each of us can only express is our own conditioning, right? Any word we say, any action we take is really the product of not just our upbringing as children, the conditions that surrounded our upbringing, what we were taught through those times, but also a lifelong series of experiences that have shaped who we are, how we think, how far we have grown, how far we have evolved. So, those of us who know that however evolved we think ourselves to be, we too are the product of our conditioning, and therefore unconsciously most of the time will also act in ways that can help but be an expression of our own limitations, our blind spots, our oftentimes lack of awareness, an inability to grasp the whole picture, our inability to take multiple perspectives, right? So all of us would act certainly in hurtful ways as a result, as a consequence of each of our limited conditioning. And it is, the only thing we can do when that happens is to become aware and then to work on it. I mean, what is going on in our world today, our nation specifically, but it's reverberating around the world as well, is that we, white people, are once again, maybe this time it'll stick, are being faced with the limitation of our conditioning, right? Of how we have been raised now for hundreds of years to relate to the world in the way we have, with that privilege, which has been the water we've been swimming in, that has been oblivious to us because of that, and now we are moved to wake up, and right, this is saying, and it won't be helpful to just beat ourselves up, fill ourselves with shame, right? All those emotions that in fact might cause us to withdraw from what is being asked of us to do now, right? And instead to say, yes, this is the expression of my conditioning, right? Can I hold myself with compassion? Can I find myself humbled by the moment, by by the vastness of what I still have to learn, right? And from that, take the necessary action to respond, to the moment, right? So I think it's fascinating that, our sages, were inviting us to judge ourselves. It's like it doesn't say hold yourself, favorably. It still says dan. The Hebrew is dan, which is just judgment, justice. It's connected to that, right? So judge yourself, but give yourself the benefit of the doubt, and become aware of the ways you are expressing your conditioning. Does that make sense?
I can think of another possibility,
Mm-hmm.
and that would be that judging other people unfavorably can result in hard feelings in ourselves. So we can be carrying around this discomfort. Oh, there they are. I don't like them. And that hurts us, maybe not them. So if we could learn not to judge others unfavorably, we could spare ourselves some of that discomfort.
Are you? Can I ask? Are you? Like, what comes up for me when I hear you say this is, we often, after we meet people once, twice, 3 times, we kind of create a picture of them in our own minds of who we think they are, right? We start to kind of create a box for them, and we put them in this box. And every time we meet them, unconsciously, perhaps, or consciously, we come to that meeting again with that box, right? And is what you're saying, like, might the teaching be, every time we meet these people, that person again, should we work to, if it was at all possible, to meet them as if for the first time, like not to come to this next meeting with the box? Is that what especially a negative box?
Yes, that certainly would be part of it.
Yeah, that's a tall order too,
No doubt.
because we're so good at that, right? We're so good at judging people, at it's oftentimes in a reaction to to ourselves, basically. Really, it's but we're so very good at saying so and so is like this, like this, like this, like this. I like them, I dislike them, I have I could go either way, whatever we decide. But we decide, at some point. All of us do that. All of us have those games we play, and and sometimes it's a good thing. There could be some relationships that you don't want to actually involve yourself into if you can avoid it. I mean, it could be also healthy for your mental health, let's put it this way. But it's true. I mean, outside of those kind of relationships that could be where you want to have healthy boundaries, it's true that we most often, Rabbi Ted always used to say, we love to meet new people. We love to meet new people because finally there is somebody who hasn't heard our story yet, and we get to tell our story. That's what we love, to meet new people. But the problem is, once we've told our story, then we have given them a means to judge us, right? We have given them, so we try to tell the best story of ourselves, but we never can know how it's going to land on the other side. What are they gonna think about us after they hear our story or the way we tell our story, right? We never know how it's gonna land. So we're excited about telling our story, but we're also afraid of telling our story. And sometimes we receive somebody else's story and we can't help but box them into a specific box. And so coming to that relationship every time we meet them, judging them favorably, it's interesting. It's interesting. And that's also part of our conditioning.
I have a friend, or I had, rest in peace, but I had a friend who, he defined friendship as knowing somebody and liking them anyways.
Say that again?
Knowing somebody and liking them anyways.
Right.
And it's kind of like that, I think, because I don't think it's possible. The rabbis tell us judge favorably, but I don't think it's possible to not judge, period. It just seems to be part of our makeup. And sometimes, even when we get to know somebody, and we grow to love them, and they become a very good friend, there's still parts about them that, may get on our nerves. So the idea of knowing somebody and liking them or loving them anyways, is, I think, kind of what the rabbis are getting at here.
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it's a kavanah. Maybe it's an intention, right? Maybe it's a way to set yourself up consciously as you meet others. Which is actually a very positive way to engage with life if you engage from that place. There's a very interesting, those of us who have, I'm gonna share the Mesorah book that I'm reading. There is a teaching here that from Reb Nachman of Bratslav, which I find really interesting. I don't think that the commentary on the teaching captures exactly. So Reb Nachman of Bratslav was one of the Hasidic masters who was, as far as I'm concerned, probably an enlightened being, and who, had a complicated persona, but was a deep mystic for sure. And the little commentary here says that Reb Nachman of Bratslav used this idea, so the idea of judging everyone favorably, to explain a verse in Psalm 37, verse 10, which is here translated in this way: just a bit more, and there will be no wicked one. You will contemplate his place, and he will not be there. So that's kind of the literal translation. Let me open it up a little bit. It's a fascinating verse in Psalm, which I think the commentary on that Mesorah is might be missing what Reb Nachman is trying to say, because I believe is looking at it from a deeply mystical place. Again, just a bit more, and there will be no wicked ones, no wicked one. So Reb Nachman was a deep meditator, and like I said, I believe an awakened being, and I think is reading this from a place of understanding the oneness of it all, right? And if you live from a place of understanding the oneness of it all, right, then there is no wicked one. Everybody is an expression of that oneness, right? So he's reading that just a bit more. Just continue practicing, right? Continue opening. That's how he reads the verse in Psalm. Continue practicing just a bit more. You're almost there. Just keep going, so that you can see everyone, right, favorably. So you can see everyone as a manifestation of the divine. It's like saying that every Torah portion is my favorite Torah portion, right? It's a work in progress, right? It's working towards actually having every Torah portion be your favorite Torah portion. It's just a bit more, as the verse says, ve'od me'at ve'ein rasha. That's what the Hebrew says. Just a bit more, and then you'll wake up to knowing that there is no one is wicked. And then it says, and it's fascinating, ve'idbonanta hal mekomo ve'eneno. Ve'idbonanta hal mekomo ve'eneno, which here is translated, you will contemplate his place. So the word place in Hebrew is another name for God, right? And here the word contemplate is hidbonanta, which is one of the words that in Hebrew is used for meditation. Lehitbonen is to look inside, to look inward. Lehit is a self-reflexive in Hebrew. Bonen is to look deeply, right? Vehidbonanta, and so it says, and then you will look inward, deeply inwardly, right? And you will meditate deeply inwardly. Al mekomo, about his place, about his presence, right? And then it ends with ve'eineno, right? And he, capital H, and it could be in Hebrew, it could be it, and it will not be there. There will be nothing. You will see that there is nothing concrete. There is nothing solid. There's no, whatever we do to others to box them in, to make them that solid person we think of them being, that is an illusion, because as we know, you and I continue to evolve. We're not the same person we were a year ago. We're not the same person we were 3 months ago. We're not the same person we were a month ago, right? Who we are is continuing to evolve. And so it's impossible, really, it's an illusion for us to think that the person we met, 5 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, that we have this image of in our head is the same person we are meeting again. Neither is the world, neither is really anything. And it's a fascinating verse to quote in the context of judge everyone favorably, because really what Reb Nachman seems to be saying is that you're signing a solidity where there is no solidity, right? You're not with the flow of things. You are trying to contain and box something that cannot be boxed or contained, right? And you're trying to solidify someone. You make them into a solid when they are a fluid. And then the quote here says, and Reb Nachman continues, we must view ourselves in this manner as well, right? If you look deeply, vehidbonanta al mekomo, you will, and you will meditate upon yourself, ve'eneno, and you'll realize that there's nobody there. It's really profound. It's really, really profound. Where Reb Nachman is taking this at this deep mystical level is fascinating, and I'm tickled that that it would make it into this book, because it's wonderful that they add Reb Nachman, and though they read it differently, it's great that it's included there. I would never have known, so I would never have found out. So you can really take that at that level as well. All right, any questions on this? Any more we want to share? I'm sure we have not exhausted all that can be shared in this.
Rabbi, I apologize. I came late. Tell me what section you're studying.
Oh, yeah, we're
pull it up.
If we are moving on now, we are moving on to we are 1 verse 7.
Is it Mishnah 6 or what is it?
It start with, well, let me see, in Sepharia, it start with Nitai the Arbelite used to say. It's a very short one. So you notice that every time there is the two Mishnayot, one that introduces both the sages. The first one usually expresses who the first of the two said, and then the second one is what the second sage said. Did you find us, Stu?
No. Does it have a number or something?
No. Well, it has a number on the right. Are you looking at Sepharia? Stu?
I will.
Oh, let me put the link again in the chat box. Because if you come after.
Oh, I see a link in the chat box.
Here it is again.
Okay.
Oh, Josh just was faster than me at the draw. So click on that.
Okay.
So that should lead you to the top of the page in Pirkei Avot, where it's 1. And if you see, there is a little 1 on the right side and a dot on the left side of each of the Hebrew text.
Right.
So you want to scroll down to the number 7.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So who wants to read that very short 7th Mishnah?
Okay, I'll read it.
All right.
Nitai, the Arbelite, used to say, "Keep a distance from an evil neighbor. Do not become attached to the wicked, and do not abandon faith in divine retribution."
All right. So it's interesting how they seem to contradict each other every time. Right? I mean, Joshua ben Perachia said, "Judge everybody favorably." And this guy says, "Keep a distance from an evil neighbor." So it sounds like we've already judged that neighbor. But it's great, Like, okay, what do we do with that now? Maybe the first one is the ideal, and then the second one is like, okay, now let's get down to the details of it. All right, so what's everybody's first reaction on that?
So maybe you're off the hook on the judgment thing.
Just kidding. We were just kidding.
Zen Judaism.
Yes, exactly. Zen Judaism. Love everybody, but don't love your neighbor. Don't love the wicked. But everybody.
Well, seriously,
it says in the Torah, love your neighbor as yourself. And here it says, distance yourself from a bad neighbor. What is it then?
Well, there's an old Baha'i saying that if you put a sick man and a healthy man in the same room, the sick one doesn't catch the other's health.
Ah, interesting.
So while you do have to love each other, you also have to protect yourself.
All right. So we're talking boundaries here then. All right. This is where we start talking about boundaries. I understand. So love everybody, but have boundaries. Got it. Anybody else wants to react to this?
Yeah, I think the comment before when you were talking about Ezra Kenegdo is interesting because these guys sounds like they were contemporaries, right? So one says love everybody, and the other one's like, I don't think so. So it's a this side, that side. It's holding all of it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Me, the trick here is the definition of evil or bad.
Mm-hmm.
What is an evil neighbor?
Right. So there is a differentiation in the Hebrew. There's bad neighbor, and it's different, obviously, from a wicked person, right? If not, there is no mistake that it was written this way. So you can tell there is a category that is happening. There's a bad neighbor that is something else than a wicked person, right? It's very interesting because it feels to us like a repetition, but it's never a repetition. They choose their words very carefully, right? And it's connected to not abandoning faith in divine retribution, which is actually also a narrow reading of that. My reading is do not despair of retribution, but it doesn't have the word divine in there. So the Sephira adding divine, again, leads us in a certain direction. So it's subtle, right? And it would make sense, but it's also leading. So we have to be very careful with translations. So the Hebrew is very interesting. So the first is harchek mishachen ra, which is distance yourself from a bad neighbor. All right, or keep a distance. Well, it's really distance yourself. Ve'al titchaber le-rasha. So again, you have this titchaber, which is the same word as the word chaver that we had in the previous verse, which talked about that intimate connection as a friend. So here it's used again. It's used on purpose, but in the sense of do not. Here I have associate yourself. What does the become attached, right, to the wicked, right? The word is chaver again, is the same word as friend. So it's interesting that here, they could have said do not become friend with the wicked, but they didn't. They went do not titchaber. A chibur is this intimate connection. Do not become intimately connected with rasha. So rasha is fascinating. Rasha is the wicked child in Passover, right? Is the rebellious.
We're back to the Tanya now.
Tell us. Yes.
So before we were all separate, we were coming together and reading the Tanya, which was all about the good person and the bad person, the Rasha. And it turned out it was really easy to become a Rasha. And if you worked really hard, you could maybe become the Benoni, the one between the two. But it's the same word.
Right, exactly the same word. And if you remember, the Tanya starts by saying, we are all Rasha. Now let's work. Right? We should, no, not we're all Rasha. We should all assume ourselves. We should all think of ourselves as being Rasha, right? Yes. But Rasha, I mean, again, in the Haggadah, right? Rasha, most of the translations are the rebellious child, not the evil child, the rebellious child. So it's a little bit different between the shachen, the neighbor that is ra, that is bad, and the mitchaber, right? The rebellious person, right? What we hear with rebellious. I mean, if you're a rabbi, right, they're telling you don't associate with a rebellious person. What would rabbi think of as rebellious?
Someone who doesn't follow the law.
Right, or rebels against, right? But to me, the rebellious is the guy who's or the person who is going to come to you with really great argument why he's right or why she's right, right? Like, because somebody who's rebellious has really thought it through, right? Like they've come to a point where they're like, have to rebel against that because, you know, I've really thought it through and it doesn't make sense to me, right? And I want to go and convince you, right? So here it says, Al titchaber, do not connect yourself intimately with those with those rebellious ones.
Shabbat Tzvi, I'm sure, did not think that he was being rebellious.
Right. Well,
nobody does. Nobody thinks. The point I'm trying to make here is nobody thinks they're being rebellious.
right.
So they come to you with these great arguments because, from their perspective, they're perfectly right.
Well, and where is the line between the chaver that is going to be kenegdo, right, in opposition to you, to help you grow, right? And when does that chaver, right, when does that intimate friend actually become a rebellious friend, right? Is that friend helping you grow, or is that friend leading you astray? And what does that mean? Where is the line here between the intimate friend that is able to move you from what you already think you know, right, and the rebellious friend that is gonna actually, yes, do that, but lead you astray, whatever that means.
Right. When my kids were young, I used to say that Rowan would cheerfully follow Tara through the gates of hell. The problem was she would cheerfully lead him.
Right.
I have a language question here too.
Yes.
With Rasha and Ra.
Yes.
I know Ra means bad, but can it not also mean wicked or evil?
Evil, usually, yeah. Bad is the literal translation, but it could be evil as well.
Okay, and Rasha is wicked.
Rasha is wicked, and we, again, in the Haggadah, is mostly used as rebellious. So it's a different kind of connotation.
Just wanted to get my limited Hebrew straight here.
Yeah.
So
I guess the problem I have is that most human advancement has come from people that were considered to be rebels in their time.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That's the.
For example, when I was growing up, Martin Luther King was considered to be a terrible rebel. Now he's revered, but he wasn't back when he was active in his ministry.
So there is a little bit of a definition here that the rabbis, this is Tiferet Israel, distinguishes between a rasha and a shachen ra. A rasha is someone who sins but does not induce others to sin. So it goes a little bit against what we were just talking about. Therefore, there is no special need to distance oneself from him as long as one does not actively associate with him, which is the titchaber, the become chaver, right? A bad neighbor, on the other hand, is one who is remiss in his duties toward God and bad toward people. Such a person not only sins himself, but seeks to involve others in iniquity. We're thus enjoined to remain completely outside his destructive orbit. That's a very powerful last sentence. We're enjoined to remain completely outside his destructive orbit. I mean, talk about boundaries. Wow, it's hitting me right now because, I think a lot about people who don't. Well, we were talking about giving people the benefit of the doubt before, and sometimes we get entangled in the aura, the circle of people who at first seem beautiful and powerful, and we're attracted to them for their intellect, for their whatever it is. We're very deeply attracted to them, and that often happens when there is a kind of a power differential, or a sense of admiration when people are successful, or when people are well known, or people that have those kinds of roles, right? And we get attracted in their circle, in their aura, whatever we want to call it, and we become blind, and we work on over and over again, giving them the power, the benefit of the doubt, right? We over and over want to judge them favorably, and we don't see that oftentimes, unbeknownst to us or unconsciously, because we may be repressing that, they can be very abusive people. Like it says, they can have a very destructive orbit, right? And so again, it's very fascinating. It's very, because they really talk about some very subtle things. How do we remain conscious, really, in our relationships with others? How can someone, that we initially, again, that word, initially, wanted to see favorably, became a shachen ra, a bad neighbor, right? And how can we always enter in relationships with our eyes wide open, when I mean, we see that in people that enter into kind of a following, right, with stars, with people in politics, people in high power, but also it could be spiritual leaders. It could be, and we've seen a lot of, look at what's happened in a Catholic Church, right? You have this, oh God, right? I mean, you know what I'm talking about. I don't need to elaborate on that. When does someone become a shachen ra, a bad neighbor? But it's also, for me, it's also, things that we inherit, through family transmission. We often talk about people who have a young boy who had an abusive, violent father, might have a tendency to themselves, become a violent father in turn, right? People who are, there is this DNA transmission, almost this family transmission. In Torah, we say, through 5 generations. And so there is also this sense of archek mishachen ra, right? Distance yourself from that. Like there is an inner work to be done to break the thread of transmission, right, as well.
That brings up an interesting point, because I'm thinking of people who, in their own time, I think would have fallen under the interpretation of Shechen Ra, but now we revere them. And from Judaism, I think it's Spinoza. From Christianity, Galileo, and from Islam, Mansur el-Hallaj. And these are people, Spinoza, to use an example, was excommunicated in his own time and shunned by the community. And now he's revered by pretty much everybody, So, I don't know how that fits in there.
Well, Spinoza is still not revered by the Orthodox world. I mean, you would have to go to pretty modern Jewish consciousness. I don't think anybody in the Orthodox world studies or knows about Spinoza. That's not the kind of books they are interested in reading. They stay very, very much into the books that are the canon of Jewish law. So I don't think.
And with Galileo, that was true right up to Pope John Paul II, who pardoned him. And with Hallaj, that's still true among Wahhabi and Salafi. But I'm just saying, by general circumstances, they're revered.
So I have another comment here, I think also connected to what I was saying earlier, from Rabbi Yehuda Lirma, who takes notes of the usage archek, which is translated in my book as distance yourself, in the Sepharia as keep a distance from. But he's reading it literally as the word remove, because he uses the transitive form. And he says, one is obligated to remove others, meaning potential neighbors, from the sphere of influence of an evil resident by warning them of his presence. So we can look at that at many different levels, obviously, with, if a pedophile, comes to your neighbor, they have to register so that you're aware of that. But let me read this again. One is obligated to remove others, meaning potential neighbors, from the sphere of influence of an evil resident by warning them of his presence. This is very powerful what he's also saying. What do you hear from that? It's really strong. One is obligated to remove others from the sphere of influence of evil residents by warning them of his presence.
Sounds like good advice.
I didn't hear. It's what?
Sounds like good advice.
Yeah, it's more than good advice. You have to remove others.
Well, it's like it's a contagion that we could.
I'm sorry.
It's like it's a contagion that we could catch this from.
Uh-huh.
So it's almost like a quarantine.
It sounds like a quarantine.
Ourselves.
Yeah, but it feels like you have to kind of go and, the word achek, he's using it. The translation, actually, according to him, right, the translation by saying distance yourself, right, or keep your distance, is actually not literal from the word. It's a translation of those of us who know Hebrew, hitrachek, so remove yourself, right? If he was hit again, it's the hits at the beginning is the self-reflexive, like hitbonenut. I was mentioning that earlier in the sense of that's how we see inward gazing, inward looking for meditation, right? So hitrachek is always referring to yourself, right? It's always self-reflexive. So if he was using that word, then you would say really distance yourself. But here it says harchek, which is like it's a commandment. Remove, hachek, as he and Rabbi Yehuda here understands it, remove not just yourself, but remove anyone from the presence of an evil, of a bad neighbor. And shachen also is interesting. Is the same word used for shekhinah, right? Shachen which is translated here as neighbor, is the masculine version of shekhinah, which is understood as the divine presence, the divine feminine indwelling presence in the world. So it could also be remove from an evil presence, right? From an evil presence, from a bad presence, not just the neighbor, right? Understood as the person who live in your neighborhood. Sorry. But really, I find it really powerful. Like it's a commandment to intervene, to intercede, to in fact almost military remove people from from places of evil. Like we have a duty, right? When it makes me think of people who are lost to addiction, right? The evil of addiction. We have a duty to go and remove them from that presence, the presence of addiction, right? Do an intervention. You have to go and intervene. That's what an intervention is. We have to act to remove them from harm. Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad interprets this part of the Mishnah as distance the evil from your neighbor. So he also kind of looks at that, rather than distancing yourself from him. So distance. So he's agreeing with Rabbi Yehuda in his interpretation. Distance the evil from your neighbor. But he understands it, so let me continue, because I think the way he understands it is that he says, then help him repent. So it's a little bit more proselytizing. It's a little bit more
might you use here the word admonish?
In which
I'm not saying that the Hebrew means admonish, but I'm saying in one sense, if it says speaking of the rabbi's commentary, if he's talking about getting him to repent, would you consider that like admonish him, try and lead him back, say, okay, you're screwing up, let's get you back to where you should be?
Yeah, I mean, there is here in my comments from Rabbi Yosef Chaim, a famous Talmudic story illustrates this approach. In Rabbi Meir's neighborhood, there were ruffians who constantly tormented him. He wanted to pray that they die. Wow. But his wise wife, Beruria, said to him, rather than praying for their death, you should pray that they repent. And obviously the story ends well. So he did pray and they did repent. Hallelujah. That's from the Brachot, which is from the Talmud, the tractate Brachot. So he was praying for their death. That's kind of cool. So again, it's the injunction of here, the reading of distance the evil from your neighbor. I'm a little bit more ambivalent with that one, because again, it feels to me, the way I don't like to interpret the golden rules: do to others what you would want others to do unto you, which to me is the worst reading of it. So I'm a little bit, I don't know about Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad. But I like Rabbi Yehuda, remove others from harm. I like that a lot. Do not despair. I think we have a few minutes, unless, there's so much that can be said on that. Please join in and share. This is why we have Chaverim to add to the conversation.
I'd like to explore just a little bit the end, which says, do not abandon faith in divine retribution.
Yes. Yes.
That sounds like a God that I'm not interested in.
Right. So, well, we can talk about that, but I mentioned earlier that the word divine does not appear in the original text. It just says, do not despair of justice or retribution, without the word divine here. So again, there is a skewing of our understanding of the text by the translator. So in looking at my commentaries, there are two opposing explanations, or understanding at least, of this. So one is from Rav Yonah, that says one should not despair in the sense of ignore the possibility. That's how they understand the word despair. So what is it in Sepharia? Abandon faith. In Hebrew is tit yaesh. So tit yaesh, it's almost like, the way I would translate it is like, do not become dry. Tit yaesh. You've waited for so long that you dried up. That's kind of what comes to me when I read that word, right? So I like the word despair, because, again, the way that the Sephir is translating it makes it really about faith and God, right? And the Hebrew doesn't have that. Tit yaesh is really like, the association in my mind is to become dry. To become, to have all life taken out of you. You become just a stump or something. So that's why I prefer despair. If somebody has a different translation, I'd welcome it. But it's like, drying on the vine kind of thing by waiting for so long. So again, Rav Yonah, one should not despair. And he hears that as one should not ignore the possibility that retribution will suddenly befall the evil one. Right? So that's the sense. Like, you should not ever surrender the idea in your mind that there is the possibility that retribution will eventually befall those who do evil.
Isn't it kind of like there is consequences to actions, like there's karma, so the evildoer eventually will have his comeuppance?
Yeah, and keeping that in mind, that even though it might not be apparent right now, right? Because obviously, if you're in the place of despairing, it means that somebody, like an evil person, has done something evil and nothing has happened to them, right? That's why you're despairing, right? If you're despairing, is that you would think that the world should be just, and why hasn't justice been done? So if you're in that place of despair, right, then this is saying, don't despair, because you should always keep in your heart or in your consciousness that eventually retribution will happen. Eventually will happen. So right. So keep that in mind, right? In the sense of if you don't see justice being done or retribution happening, then you might be led to, in fact, say, well, the hell with it. I'm just going to associate. I'm just going to, again, based on the verse above, I'm going to associate with a wicked person. I'm going to do that. Since clearly I've been despairing of retribution happening, and it's not happening, then I'm going to join in with the evil doers, right? So the teaching is, no, do not ever despair of retribution. Retribution will happen. Know that it will. Just keep that inside of you. All right. And then there is oh, that's Rashi. So maybe, Rich, you can find that in your other book. But I'm going to go to the... Rashi reads it as an independent clause. So he says, one should not let retribution cause him to despair. Even if evil comes, one should not give up hope. So Rashi reads it completely. If evil happened to you, even though you didn't do anything wrong, right? Even though you are not a wicked person. So he reads it completely differently. Rashi says, do not despair of retribution that was done to you. You understand how Rashi flips it on its head? Rashi reads it completely in the opposite. Like, Rashi's like, why do bad things happen to good people? That's what he's talking about. Right? Why does it seem that retribution is happening to me? I'm a good person. So I'm reading it again. One should not let retribution cause him to despair. Even if evil comes, one should not give up hope. And then in the words of Isaiah, the hand of God is not too short to save. Right? It's fascinating how the Hebrew allows you to read the sentence completely differently. One that says, don't go with the evil ones, because the Rabbi Yonah connected to the previous sentence. Because even if you despair of retribution against them and it's not happening, just keeping in mind that it will happen. And Rashi says, no, this is talking about retribution happening to you, bad things happening to good people. And don't despair, right? Don't despair of justice, of retribution. Because even if you are, it's like Job, right? Be like Job. With all of this happening to you, keep faith, know truth underneath it all, right? Be like Job. He doesn't say that, but that's what I'm reading, right? So what do you think?
I agree with both.
Exactly. So Jewish of you to say. To feel free to interrupt anytime, by the way, and you know that. But
No, I think that's what's unique about it. You can get two lessons that are very valid out of the same piece.
yeah,
And I think that's good. I don't think there has to be just one truth attached to that. I think you can get two truths from the same phrase, the same sentence.
I knew a sheikh who had received a letter saying, it says this in one part of the Quran, but yet it says, the exact opposite in another part. And what are we to do with this? And the sheikh's reply to him was, learn to be comfortable with ambiguity.
yes,
That's,
Yeah, yeah. To be comfortable in the discomfort, to know that there is always more than one perspective on anything, which is what this is showing us, right?
yeah, that's how the pearl comes about. I mean, that's.
So it also, for me, it leads me to another kind of, maybe more spiritual teachings, and very multiple different spiritual teachers would probably say that. But it's really about, like, specifically Rashi's comment for me is about not being, not looking for a specific outcome. Living from a place of, like, no expectations. You know what I mean? It's like living life from a place of whatever is what is, and whatever comes is what comes. And not letting yourself be swayed. I think it was, I don't remember exactly, Adyashanti, I think, said that. No, who said that? About praise and blame. Maybe Amy can jump in there, because I lost the quote. But it's like, not don't let yourself be swayed by either praise or blame. Don't let yourself be swayed by prosperity versus poverty. Neither one is is who you are. Everything is transient. Everything always changes, right? Never let yourself be swayed by honor or disgrace, right? Don't pursue those, right? Don't only want honor. Don't run away from what you perceive as disgrace. Don't want prosperity and run away from don't ultimately, it's don't, which in the meditative circles we would say, don't run after pleasure or comfort and run away from suffering or displeasure, right? Which is one of the cardinal rules of meditation, because our self, the way our little self is built, is to maximize pleasure and minimize displeasure. I mean, if you look at all the things you do in your life, right? All the things you buy, all. I mean, if you take a serious look at that, you would see that most of our actions are to maximize comfort and pleasure and minimize discomfort and displeasure, right? So, we have to stay in that place of equanimity while faced with all of that. So that's why I kind of connect more with Rashi than I connect with Rav Yonah, because it brings me to that place of, it's almost like the book of Job. I mean, Job is the quintessential example of equanimity, of knowing that whatever befalls us is what is. I mean, Job is the extreme story, right? Job is, it's very Talmudic in the sense that let's get the most radical extreme story and see how the character does in the story. But Job is like is the mountain, right? The mountain of the meditator that knows that whatever comes, to take whatever comes and never kind of, how do I say that? and see beneath the surface always, to always live. I like the image of a stormy ocean, right? So see the stormy ocean and the wave crushing at the surface, but also contain and remain beneath the surface in that calm space that doesn't have, the crushing of the waves, right? That centeredness, that groundedness, know that place, and therefore in that place of in that depth, literally in the depth of the ocean, in that depth where things are calmer, not that there are no currents, but they are calmer, they are not agitated, right? Then you will not be swayed. You will know your ground, you will know your source, you will know that you are the ocean and not the wave. So that's kind of what Rashi elicited for me.
Excuse me, I've got to run. Thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Yeah, no, we were going to close. We were going to close and do a Shalom chant unless there were Shabbat Shalom if you have to run anyways. Shabbat Shalom's too.
Thank you.
Yeah, but unless anybody wants to add, we actually did a Mishnah and a half today, which is quite remarkable, I must say. Okay. Then let's sit back. And we'll close together with a Shalom chant. So take a breath for Shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.